Showtime, we are back again. Welcome back to That's Right, I Said It. Just regular guy, no edits, no bullshit. A guy who has dealt with drug addiction and substance abuse all of his life as a functional drug addict. I welcome you. If you've watched more than one, maybe two of my videos, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really does help me when I look at my analytics to kind of know what the age range is, you know, who's watching my content. And if it's something you just appreciate the honesty and the transparency that is displayed by me on this channel, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, you know what? And one more thing. I just want to say this. I am very appreciative of the type of people that my subscribers are. And I guess I mean that just in every sincere way possible. So I posted a short couple of minutes ago. You know, as you know, a lot of you guys have been following me for a while. As you know, as a 47-year-old man, my wife and I had a surprise baby a little over a month and a half ago. And by surprise, I mean surprise. Like, surprise, I'm pregnant, surprise. A week later, the baby's born. You just can't write this shit. A lot of you have been following me for a while, know how that played out. And, you know, my wife and I didn't find out we were pregnant until 35 weeks. And my wife has always been told all of her life that she could not have a baby, right? She's been told that by multiple doctors, multiple times. So we were just always under the assumption, hey, you know, that's never going to happen for us. It's all good. We're living life to the fullest regardless. And in spite of that, we're happy, blessed individuals living our lives. And what do you know? All of a sudden, her belly starts to get really big. And then we're like, whoa, why is your belly getting so big? Maybe we should take some pregnancy tests. I mean, I know you can't get pregnant, but miracles do happen every day. So let's get a pregnancy test. Got a pregnancy test, 2 pregnancy tests. Both of them were positive. We find out that my wife is pregnant. I'm 47 years old, guys. 47. So this was way a shock to both of us. But then we find out on our first doctor's visit, we're not only pregnant, we're 35 weeks pregnant. The following Friday, which is 6 days later after finding out we're pregnant, my wife's water breaks and she goes into labor about a month early, and we have my baby boy. Long story short, that's the background. I posted a short a little while ago of me just loving on my son, you know, because I'm so happy that he's here and that he's healthy and that he's safe, especially after a pregnancy with absolutely zero prenatal care. And got a couple of good comments on it, and a lot of people, you know, oh, daddy's proud, this and that and the other, which I appreciated. And of course, I had the troll pop up, a couple of trolls pop up. Don't exploit your child. I agree. Creepy. I'm like, and the best I could think to myself is, you jokers know absolutely nothing about me and absolutely nothing about what this child means to me. So if I post a picture on Facebook and get some likes of me holding my child, what, that's exploitation now? You know? And I mean, I wanted to reach through the phone and just pinch their necks off, right? Because that's absolutely not what I'm doing. You know, I'm trying to let my subscribers and the people who run across my channel in a little bit into my life and what kind of man I am and what kind of father I am and what kind of person I am. You think I was just doing that for the camera? Then fuck off, because even when the camera's not rolling, baby, I'm loving up on my son. And I do the same thing. Well, my 17-year-old son, of course, I can't pick him up. And, you know, I posted a video of him sparring with one of his friends as well. That's my 17-year-old son. So I can't do that with him anymore. He weighs 175 pounds. But I love him up the same way. I love my freaking kids. So if you have some sort of issue with me supposedly exploiting my kids, then you can go jump right in a very deep lake with a cinder block tied to your ankle for all I care. So fuck off. Anyway, the point I was trying to make in that before I got off on the rant was that seeing comments like that really made me appreciative of the subscribers that I do have. You know, people who are actually loving, compassionate people, and you're not trolls just trying to get out on the internet and spread hate. You know, spread love, bro. Bob Marley style, spread love. You know, and I can't stand that. That has got to be one of the biggest pet peeves in my world, are people out there that just trying to spread hate. You know, like, just, but you know, it is what it is. You know, I feel sorry for the people. I really do. I feel sorry for the people that don't have anything more positive to say than that. But anyway, I'm moving on. So I had a good topic today, and this is actually one of my subscribers mentioned this, and his name, where I wrote it down here somewhere. Where is he? Oh, here it is. This is a subscriber named Christian BR6963, and he's been on the channel a few times. He actually got his own channel too. You should check it out sometime, where he talks about some things. But I'm gonna read his comments here, and then we're just gonna go on from there. Christian says, can you do a video regarding drug-induced derealization? 2 years ago, I had a panic attack with weed and psychedelics. It sent my body into shock for about a month. I was in a state where I didn't recognize anything. It was like looking at life through a cell phone camera I'm taking on low quality Android. I'd like to see a video about the effects of serotonin and dopamine and the effects on your central nervous system. Also, I replied back to him, you know, that sounds really interesting. I'd like to do that at some point. And he responds back later. Also, I just seen the reply on my last comment. Basically, derealization stems from a huge amount of stress and anxiety. It's your body's way of protecting you when you feel like you're about to die. So it shocks your body and sends you into a state of dissociation. I remember thinking I was still high after 4 days and was like, damn, I permanently fucked up my brain, LOL. I haven't touched weed in 2 years because of it. Wow. And Christian, thanks, man, for the comment. And thanks for the suggestion. You know, I like suggestions like that, because I will take good suggestions like this and run with it and do a video on it. Now, I will say right out of the gate, I'm not going to go too deep into it. You know, he asked about the effects of serotonin, dopamine, and stuff like that on the central nervous system. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to go real deep into the weeds on what causes the derealization, depersonalization, as it's also called. So I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds on that from a scientific perspective, because I'm just not freaking smart enough. I mean, I probably could if I spent, you know, a decent amount of time researching it, and kind of like a college project or something, but super busy guy, man. You know, father of 2, work full time, you know, just got a lot going on. So I'm just going to I did print out an article on it, but I'm kind of going to read about it a little bit. And then I'm going to share at least one experience that I have with derealization or depersonalization, which I've actually shared before on this channel, and it had to do with an experience I had with spice or salvia. And oh god, that stuff is terrifying. But anyway, and you know, just like every time, leave a comment, you know, and I love hearing about your guys' experiences. I'm sure all of you guys out there have had some sort of similar experience of derealization as well, but I'm gonna, without further ado, get right into it. So an association between cannabis use and the emergence of psychotic disorders among susceptible individuals is increasingly being described in the medical literature. However, little is known about how cannabis use relates to other psychiatric sequels. Moreover, there is a dearth of literature on the clinical characteristics of and risk factors for depersonalization, derealization disorder as precipitated by cannabis use. The principal clinical features of depersonalization, derealization disorder are persistent or recurrent experiences of depersonalization and derealization. Depersonalization is a dissociative symptom in which one feels like an outside observer with respect to one's thoughts, body, and sensations. Derealization is marked by feelings of unreality and detachment from one's surroundings, such that one's environment is experienced as remote or unfamiliar. Both symptoms may be a cause of significant distress and functional impairment. However, persons with depersonalization, derealization are distinguished from those with psychotic disorders by the presence of intact reality testing regarding the dissociative disturbance. Whereas an individual with schizophrenia may believe that he or she is actually outside his or her body, persons with depersonalization, derealization are aware that the dissociation is merely an uncanny sensation as an effect by the substance. Persons with depersonalization, derealization do not appear to be at risk for developing psychotic disorders. Several precipitants have been implicated in depersonalization disorder, including panic attacks and recreational drugs. The most common psychoactive drug precipitant of the disorder is cannabis. Although depersonalization and derealization symptoms may occur as part of a panic attack, persons with depersonalization disorder continue to experience symptoms following resolution of the panic attack. A cognitive model suggests that those predisposed to anxiety may develop fears regarding episodes of depersonalization and derealization, which may contribute to the emergence of the symptoms following panic attacks and substance intoxication. Some individuals who use cannabis will never experience depersonalization or derealization during or after cannabis use. However, depersonalization can remain potential side effects of cannabis, of which clinicians are unaware. In general, cannabis-induced symptoms of depersonalization are time-locked to the period of intoxication, peaking approximately 30 minutes after ingestion and subsiding within 120 minutes of exposure to the drug. However, among a subgroup of persons who use cannabis, symptoms of depersonalization persist for weeks, months, or years. Whew. Which obviously that is rare. That's terrifying. Because I'm sitting here imagining as I'm reading this a couple of the times that I've experienced something similar to this with either marijuana or spice, which is definitely worse with spice. The absolute worst experience I've ever had in regards to derealization has been, with spice. And I'm sitting here trying to imagine that never going away. Like, oh my God. It's like being caught in a loop of your worst nightmare horror movie over and over and over and over. It's like the Groundhog Day of horror movies. You wake up the same thing every day. Association with acute anxiety. There appears to be a strong relationship between acute anxiety and symptom onset in both cases of cannabis-induced depersonalization, derealization disorder, and depersonalization disorder unrelated to drug use. Persons who experience prolonged depersonalization symptoms following cannabis use often report experiencing a panic attack during intoxication, which may be due to altered hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis functioning. Wow, I haven't said this many big words since I was in college. However, the emergence of cannabis-induced depersonalization disorder is not always associated with panic, which suggests that cannabis may be a direct cause of symptom onset without mediation of anxiety symptoms. All right, I'm going to stop there. So again, I'm not going to go into a lot of the technical and anatomical and physiological terms associated with derealization, because I don't want to sound like an idiot. I'm not a scientist. My college degree is in child development, for God's sake, human development. So and I know a lot about social work. I know a lot about basic mental health, but when it comes to biology, anatomy, physiology, I have a very rudimentary understanding of those things, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm some pro when I'm actually not. So, but what I will do is share a time that I smoked spice, and it scared the absolute shit out of me. I've actually had a couple of times that this happened to me on spice, where I smoked said spice, and this was past the point of panic. We're talking about how, because it sounds like if you have a propensity for having anxiety, if you're a person that just has anxiety, I can't decide if I want this open or closed. If you're a person who has anxiety just on a regular general basis in your sober mindset, then it seems that what the article is saying is that you are more likely to experience derealization or depersonalization when you smoke something like cannabis or take a psychedelic or something like. And this is one of the reasons that I actually am somewhat scared of psychedelics, and that's one of the reasons that I've had like a tourist approach with psychedelics. I've talked about the fact that I've only done psychedelics maybe a handful of times in my life. It's just not something I've done a lot of, and that's partly why, because I just kind of have this fear of those sort of experiences. And I think it's my mind and my body's way of protecting me. Like, dude, you already have some anxiety, and my anxiety is I'm one of those people that's somewhat compulsive, and that can be a good thing when it comes to getting things done in my life and being successful and productive, but it can be a bad thing when it comes to some sort of unreasonable fear or doubt that you have in your life, because I'm the type of person that will just circle over and over and over and over. One of the reasons I love kratom, kind of naturally, the kratom and the mood lifting properties just kind of naturally turn those negative thoughts into, I kind of tend to look on the bright side of things a lot better and a lot more when I'm under the influence of kratom, which is why I dose it like it's a prescription for me every day. And I am a person that does have some kind of general anxiety in life, just in general. And I'm sure that that's why I've had, bad experiences on marijuana and spice. In fact, I smoked, it's interesting because I smoked marijuana in my early 20s, and I'll get to the story here in a minute, but I smoked marijuana in my early 20s from the time I was probably 22 to maybe 26, somewhere around in there. I was, during that period of my life, that's really the only period of my life where I can honestly say I was the quintessential pothead. I was a pothead. If I didn't have weed, I was trying to be around somebody who did have weed so I could get smoked up. If I couldn't get around somebody that had weed, I was trying to call my drug dealer, and if he was out, I was trying to get somebody else that he knew, or I was trying to see if I could just ride by for a minute to get a hit of what he had. I was a pothead. I pretty much wanted to stay high from sun up to sundown. Well, what the hell was I gonna say? And see, I'm not even smoking weed. I'm not even smoking weed either. Oh, I know. All right. Maybe it is long term. Maybe it is long term. I don't even really smoke like that anymore. But so what I was gonna say was the first time that I can remember experiencing like severe panic regarding weed was right around the time when I was about 26 years old, and I had been a pothead for about 4 or 5 years. Well, my wife at the time wasn't a fan. When I first met her, she was all in love with me and stuff, so she was like, oh, I don't care, I don't care if you do. But once I started to grow up and we started going to college, we started making a family together, all these things, well, she kind of grew up regarding those things, because in the beginning she smoked a little bit of weed with me, but she didn't become a pothead. It was something, she did it as a tourist approach just a few times, and then she didn't really want to do it anymore. Well, I kept doing it, because I drug addict tendencies. I just kept doing it and I became a pothead. So once we started to kind of think about getting married and having a family together, all these things, she started kind of wanting me to stop smoking weed. She wasn't cool anymore with me smoking weed all the time and being a pothead. So I decided that I was going to quit. So we were talking about tapering and then cold turkey, and I was saying yesterday that I actually struggle with tapering as well, and the only few times in my life that I've completely just put a hard stop on a drug and just completely quit, I had to purposely, forcefully put myself in a situation where I had no more of said drug in my presence, because if it's in my presence, I'm going to take it, I'm going to use it, right? So what ended up happening was, I remember I had a bong, I had a bowl, all my little cleaning paraphernalias, like all this stuff that I had collected over the, 3-4 years that I was a pothead and I was smoking weed every day. So, I had an attack of conscience. I was like, I'm going to stop smoking weed. I'm going to stop smoking weed. All right. So I remember I lived in an apartment, or it was like a condo, with a friend of mine at that time. And I remember I took everything that I had that was associated with marijuana, my bong, my bowl, everything, and I put it in this plastic bag, and I went out to, those big green dumpsters that everybody throws their trash bags in at like an apartment complex or something. And I walked about 100 yards away from my condo, and I took that bag, and I even took that bag, put it in our regular trash bag, and then put a bunch of stuff on top of it so it will make it difficult for me to get back to it if I wanted to. And I even put trash, like nasty trash and stuff, on top of it so that I wouldn't want to go back in and like mess with it, right? Because that's the only way I could stop. So I did that, put it in a bag, tied it up, and I went to this dumpster and I threw it in the dumpster. So now I not only don't have any weed, I don't have any paraphernalia to smoke the weed with, right? Of course, my plan only went so far, because part of the problem was, even though I wasn't around him a lot, my roommate, we were always with our girlfriends, in different places. I was always somewhere with my girlfriend, or she was over, and his girlfriend. I stayed with my girlfriend at her apartment a lot, and his girlfriend stayed with him at our condo a lot. So we didn't see each other all that often, but he was a heavy weed smoker too. He didn't have the attack of conscience. He still smoked weed. So I remember I stopped smoking weed, and I did really well. And actually went for a good strong couple of weeks and did not smoke any weed whatsoever, right? Well, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I remember after this 2 weeks, I actually had come home to like grab some clothes or something like that. And, I was missing smoking up. And I was like, you know how you do. I've done really well. I've done really well. Let me reward myself for doing so well with smoking weed, right? And so he packs up. I come home to like get my clothes or something to go back over to my girlfriend's house, and he packs up the bong. And you got to remember, this is my first time smoking. This is my first time going a long time smoking every day, all the time, and then quitting for a couple of weeks. And you know how when you haven't done something, especially like marijuana, if you haven't done it in a while and you start back, you kind of have to go easy. Well, I didn't know this. This is my first time ever really quitting marijuana, after having smoked it for a long period of time. So I go take this big, huge bong hit, and a couple of minutes later, I literally got so like disturbed and panicked. I wouldn't call it derealization, but I got so disturbed and so panicked that I had to go outside and just walk around the parking lot. And I even remember at certain portions of time actually running, just trying to like get my heart pumping, just to take my mind off of, get some other pain or like stimulus in my mind and in my head so that I could forget about just how fucked up and like paranoid that I was. And so from that point on, and it was interesting because I wanted to quit weed, right? So I quit for about 2 weeks, and then I went back and smoked that bong. And I'm here to tell you, it's kind of like Christian was saying. He was saying that he hadn't smoked weed for 2 years because he had this experience. I have a very similar story to that. This specific time, when I quit for 2 weeks, went back, took the big bong rip, and got like freaked out way, 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 way too high, where I was, just the anxiety and paranoia was just through the roof. After that, I remember being scared, like terrified to smoke weed. And that was the first time in my life, since I was, early 20s and started smoking marijuana, that I was scared to smoke it. And I went for probably, I would say, a good 2.5, maybe 3 years after that before I ever even tried it again. And I'm talking about, I was around people doing it, whatever, and I was like, nah, I'm good, man, good. I didn't want to do it. I was scared to do it because I had such a horrid experience that last time that I did it, that it just, there's nothing like being scared out of your freaking mind, like thinking you're gonna die and that it was laced with something. There's nothing like that happening to you to cause you to not want to take something anymore. It's a good deterrent, for continuing to take that specific drug. But before the video gets too long, I'm gonna tell a quick story about my derealization experience with spice. So I was living with my brother at this time. This is probably about maybe 11, 12 years ago. It was before I got married to my wife now. So it's been at least over 10 years ago. And this is, back in 2014. No, this would have been back in 2012, 13 area. So the spice thing, the salvia, had been running rampant in the country for several years. And of course now, at least in my state, you can't find this stuff anywhere. They got rid of it because there were so many freaking horror stories about people going through the stuff that I'm like similar to what I'm about to tell you about. And we had some spice. It was called, I remember what it was called. It was called Zero Gravity. Okay. And I don't know if this was salvia like specifically. I don't know how that works. I don't know if salvia is like a brand or if it's actually considered like spice, but it was the same thing as like the K2 spice, the salvia, all that shit's basically the same thing. And they spray it with some chemical that, if you get enough of it in one hit, it would just take you talking about derealization, talking about depersonalization. I mean, this one evening that I smoked it, it took me to another freaking dimension. And the episode started out with I was walking across the floor, and I noticed as I was walking, I was mid-30s, late 30s, maybe mid-30s at this time when this happened. And I noticed as I was walking, I'm like, I'm moving like a freaking 90-year-old man. I literally was moving like a 90-year-old man with a cane. And even to the point where I had my hand up on the bunk bed. We were out in my brother's studio out in the garage, and he had built like a kind of a bunk up there so that when people stayed late and recording or whatever, somebody could crawl up there and, take a nap for a little bit. And I actually had my hand on that without even realizing it, because I was that like, whoa, like out of it. So it started like that. I sat down, and I remember sitting down and my brother being 3 or 4 feet away from me, and I look over, and he looks like a wax figure. Okay? A wax figure that is moving and talking, right? but his skin and his face to me looked like a wax figure, almost as though he was a cartoon character, right? And this is my brother, you know, someone that at that time I had, you know, if I was 36, 37 years old, I'd known him for all those years, ever since I was born. So, you know, they talk about derealization and kind of being outside your body and things that you are accustomed to seeing, things that you were accustomed to seeing looking completely different, and them being almost foreign to you in that moment, even though you were ultimately extremely familiar with those things. And I looked at him and it's almost like I didn't even know him, and he looked like this wax figure. And I remember telling him that, like, whoa, you look like a wax figure, you know. And he smoked it too, but he hadn't, at that particular moment, it had been a little while since he had hit it, you know. And he was just like, oh, you know, it's crazy, you know. They kind of laughed it off or whatever. Well, the trip got even worse, all right. And this is at the point where it was kind of starting to go downhill. And I remember at one point, this trip got so bad that my immediate surroundings, like the studio we were sitting in, the studio was out in my brother's garage. He had partitioned a section of his garage off, and we had all our musical equipment in it. And I was sitting there, and that completely went away from me. And it became black for a minute. And then I remember I was on stage in front of millions of people, and I heard this sound that I, at that time, recognized as the sound of God, but it was a low sound like this, and it was going, you're better than this, you're better than, and I was looking in third person at myself up on this stage dancing around. I was supposed to be this big star, right? And I could hear the voice of what I perceived as God going, you're better than this, you're better than this, and it was echoing, and I was just like, oh. And a couple of minutes later, I remember, like, everything came back to me, and my brother and my nephew were looking at me like, dude, you all right? You all right? I was like, I think so. Like, I'm kind of starting to come out of it, right? And I'm sitting there thinking that I had closed my eyes and, like, had this dream or whatever, and they said my eyes were open the whole time. I was just, you know, staring, like, I was completely blank. I was there in body, but I was not there mentally. I was somewhere completely different. But anyway, that's one of the scariest derealization moments I ever had. I really honestly left this dimension. But tell me about a time that you experienced something like this, whether it's weed, salvia, or psychedelic. And I love to hear you guys' comments on that stuff. And like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna get on out of here. All right, peace, guys.